Joining us now to discuss the latest political headlines is Steve Schmidt, Scripps News contributor and founder of The Warning with Steve Schmidt podcast. Steve, welcome back to the show. So let's start talking about the dynamics here in the state of Georgia. President Biden was in Atlanta, not far from the jail where Trump was actually booked. Trump was in North Georgia in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, and both traded barbs about the other. Let's listen to that.
The guy who's kicking off his general election campaign on the road up with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It can tell you a lot about a person who he keeps company with. And yesterday, he was hosting at his club Viktor Orban, who says he doesn't think democracy works. Call him a fantastic leader.
Joe Biden gave the most divisive, partisan, radical, and extreme speech ever delivered by a president in that chamber, not even close. Rather than trying to bring our country together, he tried to cling to power by tearing our country apart. Joe Biden should not be shouting angrily at America. America should be shouting angrily at Joe Biden.
So, Steve, Georgia is considered a purple state and was a major factor back in 2020, not only in the presidency, but also the Senate. How critical will Georgia be in this year's election?
It will be a linchpin in whomever is able to put together that 270 electoral college votes to claim the presidency. And so both candidates will be in Georgia many times, and you see it laying out. Where is Trump? He's in the rural, Republican, MAGA, deep red part of the state. Where is the president? The president is in Atlanta. This is one of the most African-American cities demographically in the country. He'll be in the suburbs. He will be trying to drive turnout among his base in an election, as you pointed out, was decided by a razor-thin margin last time, as were the two U.S. Senate races. Georgia could well be one of the 2 or 3 states that determines who wins the next election. So far as the argumentation goes, what you see the president saying about Marjorie Taylor Greene and about Donald Trump is spot on. There is some irony hearing Donald Trump talking about a desecration of the House chamber when he incited an insurrection where it was stormed by his supporters carrying Confederate flags who defecated and urinated on the walls of both the chambers of the U.S. Senate and the United States House of Representatives. So there's a great disconnect between the rhetoric from behind the podium and the teleprompter and his actual deeds and actions concerning that building, that chamber, the institution.
And obviously we understand Georgia's somewhat purplish nature, but to be clear, big picture, Wisconsin is important, Arizona is important, Pennsylvania is important, and Nevada is important. So there are a handful of 6 or 7 states that decide this thing. If you look back at 2016, it was like 80,000 votes made a difference. In 2020, 120, 150,000 votes made a difference. So that's kind of where we are. That math isn't going to change. So beyond Georgia, that's kind of the bigger picture here. I'm curious, though. Right now in politics, I want to know your thoughts in the context of the State of the Union. The most interesting people in politics right now, I would assume, are Nikki Haley supporters, and where do they go? And then the Muslim world, Muslim Americans upset with Joe Biden and his posture toward Israel. Are they upset enough to stay home or defect to Trump, whose policies would probably be even more pro-Israel than Biden's? Those two groups, did you hear anything in the State of the Union that moved either one of those very critical needles?
No. Look, when it comes to Nikki Haley voters, the majority of those people will wind up voting for Donald Trump. A small percentage of them will decide to stay home, which is a victory of sorts for President Biden when you look at it just from a raw numbers perspective, not from a citizenship lens. And some of them, a small percentage, 5, 6, 7% of the electorate at maximum, may be available to President Biden. The reality of this is is that Republicans are going to vote for the Republican nominee, even if that nominee is Trump, but there will be a slice that's worth pursuing. When you look at the Middle East right now, and you go back to October 7th, which on the one hand seems like a long time ago, but of course is just a blip in time. If you had said on October 10th, by the time you get to early March, the president and the prime minister are going to be brawling in public, is there a political implication for that in the United States in an election? And the answer to that question is going to be yes. Netanyahu interfered inappropriately for a foreign head of government in the last election, literally and implicitly by endorsing Trump. There is animosity between the men, but when you look at the Democratic base and you look at where the convention will be in Chicago, which has always been a hotbed of left-wing protest and activism going back 50 years, all of the conditions are set for there to be a very volatile Democratic convention that splits apart the base of the party between old and young, between black and brown, and white urban liberals. And so this is a defining moment for Joe Biden politically, how he deals with an escalating and worsening situation. And of course, what hasn't been said out loud is this reality. The second the fighting stops, Netanyahu is almost certainly done politically. So there is a perverse incentive for Netanyahu to maintain an intensity of combat and conflict as justification for his political survival, and a delay of the reckoning that comes from the incompetence that created the opening for the attack in the first place. So it's a very volatile moment in Israeli politics also, including with the opposition leader who's now in government, Benny Gantz, coming to the White House in a highly unusual, very provocative visit last week.
Steve, real quick here, we only got about 30 seconds left. I wanted to talk about immigration. It came up during President Biden's State of the Union speech. It has emerged as the single most important issue to voters overall. And I was really struck by his use of the word illegal to describe the undocumented immigrant who is accused of killing an American here. Republicans have seized on this moment, but Biden using that term, a Democrat using the term illegal, really struck me as odd given this political moment and the, somewhat might argue, the conservative policies that were packed into that bipartisan immigration reform. What do you make about how the immigration debate is playing out right now just ahead of the election?
And Biden apologizing for using that word over the weekend.
Right.
Well, look, the word illegal, alien, was the term that was used ubiquitously in the culture to describe somebody who is in the country with no legal status. And there has been an imposition of appropriate vocabulary that's been imposed, and the president used the colloquial expression that probably the majority of Americans used and wound up apologizing for it on MSNBC, which is a parody of this entire woke debate, which has been weaponized by the right, weaponized on Fox News, weaponized by politicians like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. And now you have a debate over a word, the president apologizing for its use, while the circumstances that a Venezuelan who is in the country illegally should not have been here murdered somebody. So this issue is a Chernobyl-level disaster area for Democrats who are out of position on it. And if immigration is the #1 issue heading into the ballot in November, this provides an enormous advantage for the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. And this is the most important issue politically for Joe Biden to turn the heat down on in domestically.
Steve Schmidt, Scripps News contributor and founder of The Warning with Steve Schmidt podcast, As always, thanks for your time and for the conversation, sir. We
My
appreciate it.
pleasure.